Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, 5 Strategies to Unlock Production Capacity Without Hiring or CapEx. We have a lot of content to get through today, so we're just going to jump right into it. And I'm going to start by introducing our speaker, Akshat Thorani, the CEO and co-founder of Amper. Akshat, I'll let you take it away from here.
Thanks so much, Abby. Yeah, thank you all for being here. I'm really excited to share more on 5 strategies to unlock production capacity. Just a quick background myself. So my name is Akshat, started Amber about 5 years ago. I've grown up around manufacturing my whole life and really passionate about helping manufacturers unlock their potential. And we've had the chance to work with some amazing manufacturing companies, and I'm excited to share some best practices that we've developed, especially over the last year as production capacity has been pretty volatile. So without further ado, let's dive right into it. So, taking a look at industry trends on the labor shortages of skilled manufacturing talent, production capacity challenges are here to stay. It is not a temporary factor, given COVID and just the volatility in demand, but it's rather a long-term concern, which is how are we going to have the production capacity to meet only growing demands from across industries. And COVID-19 has only accelerated the impact that lacking production capacity can have. So from last March until now, we've seen completely different worlds in what demand and capacity have looked like. And right now in June 2021, well, these are the metrics from exactly a month ago. The ISM releases metrics every month on different manufacturing KPIs. And what you can see over here is that we are at higher indexes than we were in 2019. Obviously, over here in 2020, you can see the dip that happened in March and April. And the backlog of orders, which is on the right, is at 70%, which is, again, at an all-time high. What this means is that manufacturing companies are struggling to get parts out of the door, and you're not unique in the struggle. And so, really, when we look at these graphs, we want to figure out ways by which you can unlock capacity. And so, every manufacturer right now probably has hiring signs outside the building and are finding ways to increase production capacity so they can take advantage of the revenue, the sales orders, and competitively win these deals. And so there are many levers that folks are using right now to unlock their capacity. So the first one is buying new machines. Obviously, right now we have interest rates that are pretty low, so that there is good reason to do that. But even from a short term, how do you increase capacity? Folks are buying new machines. The second is investing in automation. This can be robotics, this can be cobots, or even software automation to eliminate manual processes. The third is hiring and growing the team. And finally is operational efficiency to get more production out of the existing building. And as we all know, probably the first buying new equipment and growing the team by hiring more machinists and operators is typically where folks jump to as the first levers in unlocking this capacity. And our belief at Amper is that the order of using all these 4 levers should be used, but the order of when these are used is significant. So our belief is you need to first invest in operational efficiency, because there's so much opportunity on the table with your existing machines, existing team, to unlock capacity and efficiencies. The second is to invest in automation, since those are typically longer term solutions as the skill gap and the labor shortage continue to grow. The third is hiring and growing a team. At some point, you will just simply need to hire more folks. And finally is buying new machines, which are obviously very expensive initiatives. And the thought behind this is by having good operations and efficiencies, you can effectively use the capital for that you and resources you would invest in for automation, growing the team, and buying new machines. Um, on the flip side, if you reverse this order of buying machines, hiring, and so on, you might end up wasting time and resources. And so, again, another case for investing in operational efficiency is the assumptions of where folks are from even metrics like machine uptime and utilization are often um, incorrect. And most folks believe they are at 60 to 70% machine utilization. But the reality typically, when you start collecting the data, is it's really about between 20 and 40%. This means that assumptions that we simply need to buy new machines and all may not be true until you're at a point where you're out of available spindle time. And looking at data across thousands of machines at Amper, we found about 28% to be the average machine utilization. This is pretty surprising because there's a lot of hidden waste in the system that once you begin to look at this information, there are lots of low-hanging fruits. And there's a famous saying, which is what gets measured gets improved. And in order to increase capacity, we need to first truly understand where things are at in order to effectively improve capacity. And so our goal over here at Amper is to help manufacturers build an operating system to systematically solve issues. Every business out there will constantly face one issue or another. And today it might be machine downtime because of maintenance. It could be because of not having tools and so on. But there will always be different issues that come up over time. And we're here to help build an operating system to systematically solve these issues. And so getting to the meat of the content over here is what are the 5 strategies to unlock production capacity? So the first one is to identify true capacity and unlock those low-hanging fruits that are available to pretty much every manufacturer right now. The second is prioritize Kaizens or continuous improvement projects for the top reasons why machines are down. Really to identify the 80-20 of drivers for keeping machines not running and focusing on projects that unlock those. The third one is improving your paid labor utilization. We'll get to this in a few minutes, but essentially introducing a metric that helps you optimize your spindle time, workforce hours, and setup times. And fourth is improving your routings through analyzing your plan versus actual. And the fifth is optimizing communication to eliminate waiting times. So we're going to go through each one of these in detail. So let's get into it. Right, so the first one is to identify and unlock hidden capacity. So essentially the goal here is to create a baseline where the reality is in your machine uptime. The second is visualizing this in real time and sending the right folks on your team regular reports on the reality of when your machines are running. And finally is focusing on low-hanging fruits like changeover times and so on. So here's an example of what visualizing this data might look like. So over here you can see various metrics. And a lot of our customers actually put a dashboard like this on a TV screen for the entire shop floor to have visual displays of the reality. So over here, for example, in Doosan 3, we can see a timeline through the day and see that it was in setup initially. There was some downtime. And you can even see KPIs like the machine utilization is at 65%, the top reasons for downtime, and so on. Simply putting this up on a TV screen and visualizing this has a Hawthorne effect on productivity. And the moment you start, having these metrics shown, there's a competitive aspect that gets, your team increase in productivity. The next is focusing on low-hanging fruits. So we've often seen that there are areas around, changeovers, early stops, minor stoppages, breaks that are low-hanging fruits to unlock capacity. And the reason we're talking about this first is because they're typically easy to implement and have a really high impact. So at Amper, we have a customer success management team of Six Sigma certified folks who help you identify low-hanging fruits in your operations. And so typically what this looks like is once you install metric tracking on machine uptime, you can begin to see really where the delta is in your utilization. So as you mentioned, it might be somewhere between 20 and 40%. And once you start implementing certain improvement projects, you should see that go up significantly. And so there are certain reasons why machines might be stopping that are low hanging fruit. So one of them is meetings at the start of the end of the day. Uh, when you look at how long does it take from the shift start to the first part being manufactured, it's often much longer than you'd expect. And the flip side, from the shift end to the last piece being made, that time is also often longer than what folks would expect. Um, and other opportunities as things around warm-up times for CNC machines, different cleaning. So in the injection molding world, for example, at the end of the shift, being able to clean up the workspace and set up the machine for the next shift to easily get up and running, again, adds hours to the month in terms of uptime by simple process changes. And so, in terms of implementing a solution for this, our suggestion is set up a team for internal projects around these low-hanging fruits. Using the data, you can identify what is the most optimal area to tackle on as a first step in adding this capacity back. And there are two metrics over here around time to first part and time to last part, which is from the shift start to the first piece being made and so on. And once you start tracking these day over day, week over week, you can begin to identify trends around where you're losing this capacity and begin to take that on. All right. So the second area is around prioritizing the 80-20 of downtime causes. The inverse of why machines are running is downtime. And as we mentioned at the start, what gets measured gets improved. So identifying the downtime root causes can help you identify what are those controllable issues that you can take on. And so our first recommendation is to choose downtime reasons that are actionable. So for example, over here, you can see several downtime reason codes on Amper System. So it can be anything from machine crash, loading, unloading, deburring, and so on. And so selecting downtime codes as the foundation for things that are actionable definitely is a great foundation. The second is having your operators easily tag why a machine is down. So this is an interface with Amper where operators can easily just select the reason why a machine is down. So for example, if it's been down for 40 minutes because of a setup, all they got to say is tap the setup button and it immediately classifies the reason, as opposed to having to fill out a sheet of paper where they have to manually put in the start, end, and the reasons, or have to, by memory, log it into an ERP system. And so with this data, there's a lot of projects that folks can run. So once you Pareto out your downtime reasons, you can select the top 2 or 3 ones that are really contributing excessively to machine downtime. One project that a lot of our customers have taken on, since setup is a common leading cause of downtime, is using a SMED event to reduce setup times. And this essentially removes all the waste in the process of setting up machines and reducing the changeover times. So SMED stands for single minute exchange of dies. And it takes less than 10 minutes to the goal is to reduce your setup times to under 10 minutes, essentially to a single minute, single digit minute. And um, this is an effective exercise, especially for part numbers that are that have long setup times, or new operators that are just learning how to use setup and tear down machines. And so with Amper system, you can streamline your workload and track your results on the setup times by step. So here's a screenshot of a setup tracking tool within Amper system that can help you accelerate your SMED events. So over here, you have a list of steps that would go towards um, a typical setup procedure. So from teardown, cleanup, staging, and so on. And essentially, once you have operators tag or clock how long each step is taking, you can again Pareto out the top reasons that are causing waste in a setup process and create a project to take that process out of the actual setup time. A resource that I recommend checking out is how do you conduct a SMED event. We have an ebook and a video that explains how you can run this process. And if you're a high mix, low volume manufacturer, this will be a really useful piece of content. Okay, so the third approach to increasing capacity is to improve your paid labor utilization. So, while a system like Amper can tell, your machine's uptime and downtime, you want to really understand how effective is your workforce in their efficiencies. And so, by using paid labor utilization, you can uncover, different areas of waste. So there are two ways you can measure your paid labor utilization. So the first one is essentially determine your machine to operator ratio. Often manufacturers in the CNC machining world want to have 1 to 3 or 1 to 5 machine operator to machine ratios. The second is to determine an acceptable goal for efficiency. Third, calculate the paid labor utilization. We're going to go through the formula in a second, and set up a tracking system so that you can analyze the results and take action. So here's a formula for your paid labor utilization. So it is essentially the machine uptime that is accurate based on truly collecting this data automatically, how many machines per operator, and divided by the paid labor hours and the efficiency goal. And essentially the goal over here is to keep it at 100%. And if you're above or below that, you can kind of take actions as needed. A quick case study related to this is one of our customers, GPP, which is Global Precision Parts. They did a really effective job in tracking the paid labor utilization and improving their operator to machine ratio. And so essentially by tracking this data daily and making changes, they were able to unlock a significant amount of uptime and avoid having to buy new machines to unlock the same capacity. Okay, the fourth strategy is to optimize your routings by analyzing your plan versus your actual. So often the expected routings are not reflected in reality, and you can lose revenue by not being competitive in terms of what your expected setup times or your production times, cycle times, and all should be. And so with a tool like Amper, what you can do is track how the most effective machines and operators to run certain parts. There are certain machines that are better suited for jobs, but it's hard to know that without having the data behind it. And so with Amper, essentially you can sign into your machines on certain parts. Using our analytics tools, see which machines run best for a given part, and reroute the parts to run on the machines that are most efficient. And once you do this experiment for a few weeks, you should be able to see some pretty interesting results of increased machine uptime simply by rerouting your existing jobs and part numbers. The next is sometimes the standards are simply incorrect. So you might be constantly off from what you have quoted. And you can use Amper's part number and job analytics tool to understand maybe it's time to update the standards that may have been written a while back. And that'll not only help you make sure that you are quoting accurately, but will overall give you more visibility into true bottlenecks. And so at a high level, essentially, the reasons to optimize your routings is it'll give you competitive rates, it'll give your operators targets that they believe in and can actually hit, uh, avoid allocating unnecessary capacity to a job if the actual runtime might be much less than what is um, expected. And finally, is sometimes certain jobs are just not suited for your uh, shop floor. It could be a skill or a machine capability aspect, and you're better off understanding the jobs that you should focus on and um, be competitive on. All right. And the fifth strategy is to optimize communication to eliminate your waiting times. Often, operators can be waiting on other processes from the rest of the team. And most manufacturers find it surprising when um, a significant amount of downtime is lost because of front office processes. And so some of the typical reasons why operators might be waiting are programming, on maintenance, engineering support, the tool crib, material, and finally quality and inspection. And a lot of manufacturers have found this strategy effective in helping operators be empowered to get help, which is to set an SLA, which is a service line agreement. This is essentially a commitment and expectation for the entire team of how long should they take to respond and help operators if they're waiting on a certain process. And this avoids unnecessary downtime that are typically caused by internal waiting times. So related to this is a concept called the Andon System which is part of the Toyota production system. And essentially, in the system, operators would pull a cord when they were faced with an issue, whether it was quality or otherwise. And essentially, this communicates to the entire team when someone is stuck with a certain issue. And the same concept can be used for discrete manufacturers, whether it's injection molding, CNC machining, and so on. And so an example of this would be essentially an operator would click a button that says, I want to get help from my maintenance team or my programming team. They can add a message to the system, and folks get it in real time through a text message or an email. What's really interesting is once you start measuring data around this, like who's getting called most often, what are the response times for different teams, you can begin to identify processes that can be optimized and so that the SLAs are met. For example, one of our customers had really long response times for the programming team, and it turned out that they had the opportunity to do the programs not on the machines and change the process around that. And so to recap the 5 strategies to unlock capacity, the first one is to measure and identify those low-hanging fruits for hidden capacity. The second is prioritize Kaizen events for the 80-20 of top downtime root causes. The third is improving a paid labor utilization, which is a new metric that we'd suggest checking out and seeing if it makes sense for your shop floor. The fourth is optimizing routings through analyzing a plan versus actuals. And finally, is optimizing your communication to eliminate your waiting times. Taking a step back at the overall supply chain, the reason this matters for manufacturers is sales can often be volatile because of the bullwhip effect. If you look at this graph, minor fluctuations on the consumer end can cause much higher fluctuations for manufacturers and suppliers, which means that while things might be busy and there's a huge backlog of orders, the reverse might be true as well of not having enough sales as it was just at the start of COVID. And having your operational efficiency be really high helps you avoid having to unnecessarily add equipment and resources when you can take advantage of low-hanging fruits on the table today. And so ultimately, by going through the process of identifying and unlocking a capacity, you might ultimately have to invest in new machines, in more automation, in hiring a team, and so on. And that's a good thing, but at least you've started from a place where you have metrics, have data to back up these decisions. For example, one of our customers, Belden Universal, um, they use Amper's data to essentially, first of all, create a baseline and ultimately use it for daily operations. And the reason I bring them up is they used Amper's data to actually avoid having to buy new assets because their existing machine utilization was not as high as they expected. And on the flip side, at a certain point, they actually found the data to show that they needed to add new equipment and have that justified. And so it cuts both ways, but it ultimately gives you better information to make these really important decisions. And finally, just want to end on Amper. As I mentioned, we're really passionate about helping manufacturers unlock their potential. And we provide a radically simple machine monitoring and OEE tracking tool. Essentially, we start from collecting shop floor data, add context like employees, part numbers, and so on, and finally provide applications like production reporting, communication, maintenance, and so on. And the system takes just 15 minutes to install on any kind of machine, new or old. You essentially clip the sensor around the electrical wire. The signatures of machines are converted into metrics, and you can visualize this data in real time from your phone or your computer. And so in terms of what's next, we're offering free trials of the system. So if you want to take the product for a spin on 2 machines, you can sign up for a trial. And we also have a live webinar with one of our customers from GPP, who's going to be sharing their story on how they unlocked capacity and increased productivity. And this will be on July 14th at 11 a.m. Central. So thank you all for your time, and hope you found these to be pretty helpful.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks.